Yep, and we're live now. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me. My name is Mary Parsons. I am the Associate Director here at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and I'm happy to talk to you a little bit today about finding your best fit here studying in the United States. So first things first, where are you going to go? That should be easy, right? Except for in the United States, we have over 3,300 universities and colleges for you to choose from. So that's a big list. And if you're thinking, well, I know what I want to study, great. It's a really good start. But if you notice, just the schools offering engineering or just the schools offering business leaves you with a list of more than 300 or 400 institutions. That's still a lot to choose from and far more than you should be applying to. You should be applying to about 3 to 5 institutions. Usually in the US, we recommend your dream school, the one you think is just the most wonderful but is potentially a little bit harder to get into, a school you are pretty confident you can get into and is a good choice, and a school you know you can get into. And after that, if there are a couple extra schools that you've considered are a really good fit, that's a good choice as well. But you need to be doing some research on these schools. You need to know who they are and why you want to go. So when you go and apply to more than 5 schools, that starts to get a little bit blurry. It's good that you know what these schools are and what they're about and why you need to do your research to know these 3 to 5 schools, in part because you have to go to a visa interview. And they're going to ask you why you applied to this school or why you want to go to this school. And if you applied to 15 schools, at some point, all of that's going to blur and you're not going to really be sure what the qualities of that school are. So when you go to 3 to 5, and you apply to 3 to 5 rather, you are going to know enough information about those schools to speak to them well in your interview. Also, 3 to 5 schools, it's enough that you can actually do real research. You can know what those schools are about and you can know that they're a good fit for you. So what kinds of schools are there in the US? Obviously, we have public and private schools. In the US, public schools are not allowed to have any religious affiliation. So the private schools may have a religious affiliation. And it's important to look into that just a little bit because while some religious affiliated schools have no specific requirements of their students, there are some religious affiliated schools that have a student code. They have specific requirements for their students, like having a close personal relationship with Jesus Christ is one that I've seen that's fairly common. But they go from you have to attend chapel once a week and that's it, to you can't drink, you can't dance, you can't do these different things that you have to sign off on an honor code. And that's not a bad thing by any means, but it's good to know when you're going in because it speaks a lot to the culture of that campus. And it lets you know what kinds of students are going to be there in terms of expectations for behavior, what that environment will feel like. And then there are some private institutions that have no religious affiliation whatsoever, but they probably did historically. And that'll speak a little bit to the environment on their campus as well. Obviously, we have urban, rural, and suburban schools. So when you think about who you are and where you want to live, that could influence your decision as well. Small, medium, and large, and they can be small. They can be 400 or 500 students, and they can be 60, 75,000 students. So it's a really wide range. When you're looking at these schools and their size, sometimes the overall size of the institution isn't as important as the size of your program. You'll often make close personal relationships with inside your academic unit. So if you're looking at a school that's 75,000 people and you think, oh my gosh, that's just enormous. Well, your academic unit is going to be much smaller. And that's where taking the time to talk to someone within that unit is probably worth your effort, just so you can get a feel of what that particular section of campus, what that particular environment is like, because it's going to mean more to you than maybe what the entire campus feels like. And then athletic divisions, I put 1, 2, and 3. So that's specific to the NCAA, the National College Athletic Association. It's important for you to know those if you're considering any sort of athletics, just because only certain levels can offer scholarships. The largest scholarships come in at Division 1. There are also some scholarships at Division 2, but they tend to be smaller. And then Division 3 cannot offer scholarships. There are other athletic units like NAIA, but the most common is going to be NCAA. And then this kind of environment on campus also directly relates to the academic type. So whether it's a research institution or a liberal arts college, that'll tell you a lot about the kinds of things that are going on there. There are also minority serving institutions, and the letters there are what you'll see to describe them frequently, but an HBCU is a historically Black college or university. And HSI is a Hispanic serving institution, and we do have some tribal colleges in the United States. Tribal is probably not something that you'll run into on a common search, but the others you could. And then we do still have some institutions that are women's colleges or have historically been women's colleges, but may have more open admission practices now. Something important to consider, do the students have to live on campus? So residential, non-residential, and commuter campuses. This really speaks to the kind of environment that they're going to have on campus. So do you want it to be somewhere where everyone's going to be around on the weekend and lots of events are planned and everyone's there together on a residential campus? Non-residential is fine if you want to live off campus, and they often still have good community life on campus and even on the weekends sometimes. But a commuter campus is going to get very quiet in the evenings on the weekends potentially. And then community college, a four-year college, and a comprehensive university. Often in the United States, people get a little bit confused about what college and university mean. So sometimes it can mean that it's a four-year college, that it doesn't offer master's or PhD or any sort of postdoc programs. Or it could mean that it's a two-year community college. But sometimes these schools were historically a college and are now offering all of these things, but retained their name. So it's not safe to look at it and say, oh, well, this is a college and this is a university. Higher education has been going on, obviously, for a while in the United States, and the institutions evolve. So it's better to look at the website and look at the programs they offer and really read about it and not make assumptions about whether it's called college or university and what it offers. All right, so you have all of those things. What's going to help you narrow your choices? Obviously, let's say you're interested in engineering, and I said there are more than 400 institutions that offer engineering programs in the United States. They're all going to have specialty areas. So if you have some sort of idea what you're interested in doing beyond just saying, oh, I want to do mechanical engineering, maybe you know exactly what you're interested in pursuing. So start to look into what those specialty areas are. Even if you don't know exactly, but you kind of have an idea, you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to explore those different areas that you're interested in. And that may start to narrow down that list. Also, the academic criteria. You know who you are as a student. You know what your students have accomplished. And you can usually tell with most institutions what their admission criteria is on their website. Most institutions are going to be very straightforward about the kinds of grades that they're looking for, the kinds of experiences they're looking for, the kinds of test scores that they're looking for. Not all of them, but most. So that'll help you narrow that down as well. If the institution doesn't have that on their website, obviously don't cross them off. It may just mean that they're more competitive and they look at the pool that they have that year, and that the students that are admitted, depending on who applies, have a little bit different profile each year. It may be a more competitive year, and the class coming in has higher grades and higher test scores than the year before because they have limited seats. Public institutions don't tend to have limited seats, and they don't tend to be so competitive that they can't tell you what they're looking for on an application. Public institutions should be telling you exactly what kind of student profile they look for. And then cost. It's a reality that cost is going to make some decisions for us in life. It depends on you how much work you're willing to put in for scholarships, not just within the institution, but also external scholarships. But regardless, the cost of attending, the cost of living in certain parts of the country often make decisions for us. All right, so there's a little bit of misunderstanding sometimes about the cost of attendance for universities in the United States. And one of those in particular is that the higher the scholarship, the lower the cost of attendance. That is not necessarily true. It makes sense when you think about it, that if an institution costs $60,000 and they offer you a $20,000 scholarship, that you still owe $40,000. So if you look at an institution that costs $40,000 and they offer you any kind of scholarship, even if it's only $2,000, they are technically the more affordable institution. So it's easy to get excited about those larger scholarships, and absolutely get excited about being awarded a large scholarship because it means you earned it, it means you worked for it, and they're acknowledging that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that institution is ultimately going to be the right institution for you. If it is a private institution and they have offered you a scholarship and it is close in cost to another institution that you're considering, but the other institution has offered you a slightly larger scholarship, you can actually tell them that and tell them that they're your first choice. But another institution has offered you a little bit more. A private institution may have additional funds where they're willing to compete for a student on that level and offer a little bit more. If you come in and say, well, they offered me $15,000, $20,000 more, I could see them backing out on that because that's a lot. But if it's close, it's worth asking. And the second myth, the school's I-20 estimated cost is the exact amount you owe. So if you talk to recruiters on the road, or you'll see on one of my slides later, the amount that I give you for the cost of attendance is the amount that we have estimated based on guidelines from the federal government, because you have to go to your visa interview and say that you have shown proof of financial support that you can afford to attend the institution. Some of those numbers are kind of made up. So the tuition numbers are usually based on a general rate. Some programs have higher fees, like laboratory fees. And then it's also based off of last year's tuition costs, because the new tuition costs come out every year in July. The fiscal year for higher education in the United States starts in July. So we actually don't know the total cost for tuition for this next year until a couple weeks from now. Now, typically, institutions have caps. They can only go up between usually 2 and 7%. So you should be pretty close. But it's also based off of a certain number of credit hours. So if you are going to take more credit hours, your cost obviously will increase with that, unless the institution has flat rate tuition, which would just mean if an institution has flat rate tuition, regardless of the number of credit hours you take, you pay the same amount. Now that's usually capped too at about 18 credit hours, but something that's worth asking. If they have it in place, that can be really useful. And then we also estimate your cost of living. For UMKC, we estimate your cost of living based off of living on campus and having a meal plan. But technically, you can base it off of the poverty line in the United States and federal government guidelines. That tends to be lower, but it's not always as honest, just because sometimes students are going to live on campus and we don't know what kind of housing you'll find off campus. We have to guess, and these best guesses are giving you the information that we think you need so that you can come and live in the United States safely and have a good idea of what it'll cost. But it is not an exact amount, and it is not a check you write to someone, and it's a good predictor, but it's not something to rely on too heavily. Costs could be higher, costs could be a little bit lower. It just gives you a general idea. And then another one we get a lot is, I can cover my costs with an on-campus job. So we can't consider your on-campus job part of your proof of financial support, in part because you don't have that job yet, and so it doesn't count. But also because a job on campus is really unlikely to pay enough to really cover your tuition. We often have students use that money to pay for things like their cell phone, potentially their books and supplies, to go out with friends and have pizza or go to the movies. Those kinds of things can absolutely be covered by a campus job. And depending on where you live, campus jobs can pay probably somewhere from $8 to $15 an hour. If you go into laboratories or research fields where they might offer campus jobs within those labs, those jobs could also pay just a little bit more. So this is actually a map that I got from another university when they were presenting, but it's really helpful to see the cost of living in the United States. This is how much it would cost, you would have to make to pay for a 2-bedroom rental housing. Now, this is assuming if you worked 40 hours a week, which our students are only allowed to work 20 hours a week on their on-campus positions. But the exact detail isn't as relevant as just looking at the range of costs to look at the states that are more or less affordable. Now, it'll make sense to a lot of you that New York, California, and places like that are a lot more expensive places to live. That doesn't mean there aren't places within the state that are a little bit more affordable. If you don't go to the primary cities, you may be able to find an institution in a place with a more affordable cost of living. But in general, this is an idea of what the states look like in terms of what it costs to live there. All right, so there's a couple of things that should not determine where you go. And one of those is deadlines. In the US, we tend to be rule followers. So when we set a deadline, it's generally a strict deadline. It helps now with technology that things close. So if it's an online application for a scholarship, and the deadline is June 1st, and you go to the website today, it will probably not function. Regardless, if it's something that you mail in or something that you email in, we tend to be really strict on deadlines. And if you miss that deadline, you won't be considered, whether it's a scholarship or an application for admission. So make sure you're doing your research ahead of time. Make sure you know what the deadlines are for the institutions you're considering, and make sure you get your things in by that time. Don't let missing a deadline mean you miss out on an opportunity to go to somewhere that you were really excited about. Tests. Some schools are requiring more tests than others. Some schools require the SAT. Some schools require the ACT. Some schools require proof of English proficiency from you and a different English test. Don't let those tests determine where you apply. You are all capable. You're wonderful people. You can take the test. It's better to take it and try than to not take it at all and dismiss all of the institutions that require those tests. It's just a couple hours of your life, right? No, it's absolutely worth it because the programs that require those tests may be the right program for you. And that's one little step over 4, 5, 6 years, however long you spend in the United States studying, if you go on beyond your bachelor's degree. And don't let that one test in the beginning make that decision for you. Application fees, they add up when you're applying to lots of institutions, and we know that. Figure out roughly your 3 to 5 schools, and that's again why it's important to have maybe only 3, so that you can afford and feel comfortable with the amount you're paying to all these institutions to apply. Now, hopefully the application fees aren't so exorbitant that that's an issue, but it can be a little bit intimidating sometimes when you watch it add up as you apply to many schools. Your best friend goes there. Maybe that school is a good fit for you, and maybe you do go to the same school as your best friend, but maybe not. So make sure that you're looking at the school and how it meets your needs and not just because there's somebody there that you know. And then proximity to the beach, which is a joke, but again, you are not going there necessarily to hang out at the beach. You're going to accomplish your academic and professional goals. And while being by the beach may be a lovely idea and it may work out that the schools by the beach have your program and are a good fit, don't make that your primary decision-making point. All right, so this requires a little bit of self-reflection on your part, but who are you and what do you need? Those are the things that you need to consider when you look at these schools. Now, I will say first, as you look at these schools and you end up with a list of 10 and 20, you're trying to determine which 3 to 5 to apply to. There is more than one school you will be happy at. There is more than one school that is a right fit. It's not just one school in thousands that you're looking for. There are probably many. You just have to narrow it down to a functional list. So some of the things to ask yourself, what kind of environment do you come from? Do you come from a big city? Do you come from a little city? Do you like it? There are important things to consider. What environment are you most successful in academically? Maybe you come from a really big city and you really love it, but you're also so active to the point that it distracts you from some of your goals. What environment are you most successfully in personally and emotionally? It's a good thing to consider. We talk a lot about academics. We talk about the rank of the institution. We talk about the rigor of the courses, but you also need to be in an environment where you can take on all of those challenges. If you are in a place where you can feel good personally and emotionally, you can do more difficult things. You can take on harder challenges. If you are in an environment where you feel uncomfortable or stressed, those challenges are just additional stressors. So it's a complex thing to consider, but it's an important thing to consider. And then what activities or community connections would enhance your mental health? And how do you relieve stress? That goes back to the same thing. If we can help you find an environment where you feel happy, where you get up in the morning and you feel good about where you are, when you get handed that test for a really important course, it is not as stressful, it's not as hard when you're in an environment where you feel like you're supported and happy. And also, how would living on or off campus enhance your student experience? So some institutions are going to require you to live there. And I know for many that feels like a really good thing. Your life is planned out, you know where you're going to live, there's furniture, there's food, somebody's doing the dishes, great. And for some of you that feels a little bit restrictive. I always recommend living on campus for the first year if that's an option. You're moving halfway around the world. You would have to do a lot of cooking and dishes and add on to what it feels like to be in this new environment and also then take care of yourself in an adult fashion for potentially the first time in your life. By living on campus, it frees up that time for you to explore, to make friends, to join groups, to take a hard class. It gives you the opportunity to focus on being a student instead of focusing on being a student and an independent adult. And now a lot of students will move off campus after that first year. They'll make a group of friends and find housing nearby. I do think it's important to be nearby because a long commute then adds on to all the other things that you're doing. But it's important to note in the institution what they allow. Some allow you to live on campus the first year. Some require you to live on campus the first year. Some require you to live on campus for the entire duration of your program. So that may be a deciding factor for you as well. All right, so here's an example, and this is actually me. I was 17 years old when I graduated from high school. I had no idea what I wanted to study, probably something in the humanities. and I was from a really, really small town. It was a close-knit community. I was a good student, and I knew I wanted to study abroad, and that's it. So it's really hard to narrow down institutions when you don't know what you want to study. So I focused on an environment where I thought I would be successful. I chose a small school where I got to live on campus. Certainly finding an apartment when I came from a town of about 10,000 people would have been a really intimidating process for me. So I lived in the residential halls in a community that was a very strong on-campus presence. There's always something going on, always an opportunity to meet people. The kind of community that I came from had humanities offerings, so whatever I decided was going to work. And then it was really important to me that someone from my hometown was there. So I said, don't just go where your best friend is going. And that's true. But if you need to go to a place where you feel comfortable knowing that there's someone you know nearby, and it could be in a certain mile radius, maybe they're in a town over, there is a certain amount of comfort there knowing you can just pick up the phone and there's somebody there that you know. Now, in the United States, that may also mean student associations. A lot of institutions have really strong international student associations, and that could be something to check out. All right, example number 2, Casey Root, 18 years old, and he wants to study computer science. He is from a big city. He's used to having friends and family around. He does not want to live on campus, and he's interested in US food, culture, and music. So he could choose a city. He could choose a really big city. It's where he's from, and he liked it. He obviously wants to make sure that campus does not have a residential requirement, so he doesn't have to live in the dorms. And he wants to know that the institution has a strong relationship with their city because he wants to experience US culture, not just US campus culture. And then that his cultural group is represented in the city or the student population is also important. All right, that is what I have for best fit. If we are ready to continue, we will go on to a little bit about the University of Missouri, Kansas City.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to interrupt here. Thank you so much, Mary. Truly appreciate your kind time and sharing some very valuable tips and details. I'm going to run a quick poll for the audience, and to the audience who've been part of who've seen our emails, gone through to your schools and guidance counselors. We do these polls to ensure you're engaged. So let us get this on screen really quick, 30 seconds. Have you heard of the University of Missouri, Kansas City is our question for the day. And of course, we will spend about another 20 seconds before we proceed. Thank you. So we have another 8 seconds out here. I'm just going to quickly put 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And I'm going to share the results so Mary can have a look at the results.
Hey.
And we had about, most of the students have heard about the University of University of Missouri, Kansas City. I'm so sorry. And we're really interested to learn a little bit more. I'm sure this is why you signed up for the session today when it was sent to your school guidance counselors. So I will now once again hand over the microphone and the stage to Mary. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you. I'm excited to see how many of you have heard of UMKC. That's really wonderful. All right, so let's get into it and learn a little bit more. This is a picture of campus looking towards the city. So we are in the city. We are not out in the suburbs, but we are also not in the business district downtown. If you look towards the skyline up at the top of the screen, that is the business district. It's about 2 miles away. We do have public transportation, so if you want to get over there and enjoy all that that has to offer, there are performances, restaurants, farmers markets, all kinds of things. But in this area by campus, there is walkable shopping, there's a movie theater, there's a museum, and then as you can see, we're in a really green area. And actually the buildings that we're looking at in the foreground are our business programs, as well as our student union and some of our student housing. All right, quick facts. We are in a city of about 2 million people. We have probably over 1,000 international students now, with 16,000 students a part of the UMKC community. We do have an active Indian Student Association. And as far as some of the qualities I mentioned earlier, we are a public institution, we're a research institution, and we're an urban institution. And we are a comprehensive university. We do offer bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs. That can be important if you're considering something in research, just because it means you can get involved at the undergraduate level. All right, so we actually have a second quiz, and I want you to stare at a point on your screen or touch it if you'd like, where you believe Kansas City is located. And if everybody has their guess ready, we'll see if you were right. Yay, everybody got it right, right? I can't see you, so I'll believe you did. We are located right in the center of the country, and that's really cool for our students. We do have an international airport, so it's easy to get to us, but it also means it's easy to leave. Why would you want to leave? If you want to do professional presentations or research or participate in internships or have a summer job somewhere else in the country or even just travel over breaks, it's very easy to do in and out of Kansas City. It's very easy to fly, take a train, take a bus, go to Chicago, go to Texas, go to Florida. A lot of our students take advantage of our location to do a lot of exploring in their time at UMKC. So, and this is the city of Kansas City. And the reason that I wanted to show you this, like most of you, we've also been impacted by the coronavirus and everybody's working from home and working from home. But we also didn't get to have our graduation ceremonies, which I think was also true around the world. And so what happened in the city of Kansas City was that they lit up all their buildings in blue and gold, which are our colors, and celebrated our students with us. So there's a daytime picture and a nighttime picture. But for the week where we would have had our graduation, our city really showed up for our students to say that we acknowledge what they've accomplished and want to celebrate with them, even if we can't be together. For me, that's a really good sign. It shows that we have a really good relationship with our city. We're not just sitting in the city, we are an active part of the city. We contribute with our academic programs, we contribute with our community service. And it means that not only do you have a really good relationship sort of automatically by being a part of UMKC, it means that we have all the connections across the city to also help you find a job at the end. So life at UMKC. Now I said we had 16,000 students, and that's true, but only about 13,000 students are present on campus. We have about 1,600 students in residence halls, so only about 10% of our students' total population live on campus. We do have apartments for upperclassmen or for graduate students, so while you would start out in a residence hall if you lived on campus, you could move further into a furnished apartment as you go through your program. And like I said, we have about 1,000 international students now. It's a really great community. Like I said, we have the Indian Student Association, but we have a number of associations from our different student groups on campus. And we also have Culture Night and different events hosted by a group of international student ambassadors to really bring our international student community together. Now, I will say also, one of my favorite things about UMKC is it's a really diverse campus, and not just in the international student population, but in the domestic student population. We learn a lot from each other by interacting so regularly on a day-to-day basis, and it really makes a big difference in the kind of environment that we have to offer at UMKC. I mentioned that we have student organizations. Many of them are cultural, but we have a variety. They may have to do with your study area. They may have to do with a social purpose. They may have to do with just something fun that you like to do. So we absolutely encourage students to get involved. And we've actually had international students that have gone on to become the student body president. And we are a Division I NCAA athletics university, and we have 17 different teams. We do not have American football, which sort of sets us apart as being a little bit different. But we do have really strong teams in things like soccer and basketball. Now, the city does have American football. The city of Kansas City is known for its professional sports, so if that's something that you're hoping to see, we do have football, we have soccer, and we have baseball. And the city absolutely loves their athletic teams, so you would learn all about it if you came. And then, yes, again, you have access to the city's professional athletic events, performances, festivals, and more. There's always something going on in the city. In fact, the very first Friday of every single month, it's called First Fridays. It's very creatively named. But there are a lot of businesses that open up, food trucks that come out. Throughout the city, there is a lot to do, music, art displays, different things to get people out there and active in the city. In the classroom, we try to keep our class sizes small. And that's important because it means you have more of an opportunity to develop a close relationship with your faculty, both for research opportunities that are going on campus, but also for professional opportunities. If you take that time to get to know your professors, when they see job opportunities open up as you near graduation, they're going to make sure that you know about them. They're going to know what your interests are and how you fit that position. So it's important to take that time. But it's also important because our faculty are open to questions, they're open to interactions. They want you to come into their office hours and they want you to be successful in their classes. So take that time to get to know them, to talk to them, to ask questions. Most of our faculty are actively involved in ongoing research. And you'll see this on a lot of descriptions, but 95% of our faculty hold terminal degrees. What that means is that they have the highest level of education required by their field. And depending on what field that is, it could be a little bit different. And I added this here at the bottom just to give you guys an idea about what UMKC is doing in response to COVID. We are restricting our classrooms to in-person to only 25% capacity. So if it's a hall that holds 50 people, we will be having far fewer people in that classroom. We also are mixing our courses up. We're having as much online as we can, but we understand how important it is to have that face-to-face interaction. So we're also offering blended courses where you may have some days on campus and some days online. And then we are reopening with staff in August. Right now, campus is very quiet, it's closed, we're all at home. And we'll come back over the course of the summer and be up and functioning again in August. We do have different things in place to make sure that if we need to send everybody home again and go online, we're prepared to do so. We did that in a matter of 2 days this spring. So we have some pretty extraordinary faculty who took on that challenge and are prepared going forward to meet the needs of whatever we need to do to keep our students, our faculty, and our staff safe. And here is a giant list of all of the undergraduate programs that we offer. There are some more emphasis areas beyond what is listed here, but honestly, I ran out of room. And so if you don't see what you're looking for within one of them, perhaps music and all the different instruments that we offer, that's all available on our website. And if you send me an email, I'm happy to help you find that or get you connected with the right faculty. But this should give you a good idea of what we offer. And I would say our strongest programs tend to be in areas that are also reflected within the professional fields of the city. And the city of Kansas City has a really strong entrepreneurial spirit. It's very tech-based and it's also health-based. So we have a company called Cerner, and they actually create a lot of technology used in hospitals around the country. And that kind of gives you an idea of all of the different areas we combine health and technology within the institution. So take a look at that. I'm going to leave it up for just a little bit longer so you can find your program, figure out if you have a program you have questions about. And I know that you're sending questions through right now. If you have a very specific question about an academic program, save that one maybe to send me an email later so I can answer it more thoroughly and send you links and information to contact faculty or something that might help you out a little bit more than just a verbal answer. And as mentioned before, cost of attendance. We have to come up with a cost of attendance to put on your visa document to tell the federal government what we expect you will spend and to give you an idea, obviously, of what we think we cost. So the tuition and fees is based off of 12 credit hours per semester, and this is for 2 semesters, so this is for 1 full year. As I mentioned before, our living expenses are based off of living in the dormitory with a meal plan. And you don't have to, and there may actually be more affordable dormitory and meal plan options. This is somewhere in the average. And then other insurance, books and supplies, miscellaneous fees, we try to predict that as best we can. And that gives you the total. I mentioned before that this is the rate for the previous school year. So we do expect the tuition and fees, which is the one thing that we do know, to go up just a little bit. And then 12 credit hours is what's considered full-time for an undergraduate student. So that is what you are required to be enrolled in to keep your visa active. Of course, we have scholarships. And most of our scholarships are automatic, which is really great. And most of our scholarships don't have deadlines, which is also really great. The Dean's International Scholar Award is offered by the School of Computing and Engineering. It is $8,500, so it's about 40% of your tuition. And you keep it for as long as you're doing well in the program. And you do nothing in particular to apply for it. When you apply, we see your grades, we see your scores, and we say, yep, looks good. And we tell the School of Computing and Engineering, and they apply that scholarship to your account. The Chancellor's Non-Resident Award is just a little bit different. It's offered by Arts and Sciences and Business, and it is a percentage of your tuition. It's also roughly 40%. But instead of being a fixed rate like the Dean's International Scholar Award, if you were to take 15 credit hours, for example, it would increase in its value and cover that percentage of the non-resident tuition as well. And so it ranges between about $8,000 and $10,000. It's renewable in the same fashion and requires a 3 on a 4-point scale for grade point average and a 79 on the TOEFL. We also accept things like IELTS, PTE, we'll take an SAT equivalency, Duolingo, so whatever the equivalent is, and we have that outlined on our website. I will say for almost all scholarships at UMKC, a 3.0 GPA and a 79 on the TOEFL is a really good, secure place to start. You should feel pretty confident about your application for any of the academic programs, and you should feel really good about your odds for a scholarship. And then the UMKC Conservatory of Music, Dance, and Theater, they obviously have performance scholarships, and you can submit all of your materials for an audition digitally. They do have a deadline both for applying to the program and applying for a scholarship. So you have to make sure you pay attention to those deadlines within the conservatory. The academic programs in things like the School of Computing and Engineering, Arts and Sciences, Business, they do not have application deadlines typically at the undergraduate level, which means you can apply all the way up through July. Eventually, we start telling students, we don't think you can get a visa anymore, and we'll encourage students to apply for a future semester. But because we do rolling admission, we don't technically have any deadlines. But you are going to be a prepared student, and you are going to apply on time. And what that means for us is that you apply at least 3 months in advance. The application opens up 1 full year, and this is true for all institutions in the United States, prior to when you're going to come. So August 1st, we'll open the new application for next fall. And what that means is apply ahead of time so you can get all the information from the 3 to 5 schools that you're applying for. We can send you everything you need to be prepared to get your visa, to do all of that in a fashion that isn't stressful, even though we don't have application deadlines. And just really quick, I have a sort of exciting thing to show you. We will be opening this fall a brand new high-tech facility within our School of Computing and Engineering. And I will confess that I copy-pasted the different labs and things that are going to be in there down there for you to read about. But we're very, very excited to see this opening. We have a lot to offer in our old building, but we have even more now, including a multi-story facility for flying drones inside. So take a look at that real quick if you're interested in engineering and see some of the things that are headed our way. And I can send you this as well. There's also a website where you can watch the construction live if that's interesting for you. And that is all I have. I know that's a lot of information, and I know that I speak very quickly, so I hope that I'll be able to help with some of the questions that have been asked.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary. I'll come back on quickly. I hope you can see me. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Truly appreciate the information. I think we have a few questions in the Q&A, and I think we can proceed to the Q&A section. So thank you once again for your kind time.
So the first question I see is, do colleges or universities have a stronger emphasis on liberal arts? And the reality is that the designation of college or university probably won't tell you that. But if you go to the About page, so all institutions are going to have an About page on their website, it will tell you a little bit about their mission or their goals or their identity, and they will tell you if they're a liberal arts institution. So a lot of the four-year colleges are probably more likely to be a liberal arts institution, just because if it is a comprehensive university with a master's and PhD, they're more likely to be focused on research. But those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. And so it's worth really looking at that institution they'll tell you if they focus on liberal arts or not. What would be the difference in learning in terms of academic semesters, trimesters, and quarters? So the learning outcome should be exactly the same. It just changes what your feel is for being there year round. Obviously trimesters are going to keep you going, and quarters might enable you to take more classes in a shorter period of time, but they may also be more intense. Semesters are more typical for us in the US, and UMKC functions on a semester calendar, but I wouldn't necessarily choose my school just based on their academic calendar because the learning outcomes should be the same. It's important to note that academic programs in the United States are all accredited by specific bodies, and what that accreditation means for you really is that they're accomplishing similar goals, that an external party has established a relationship with them that says they're willing to speak to the quality of the program that they offer and that they meet the goals required by the professional field. And that's probably more important than the academic calendar. What would a typical on-campus job be? Most campuses are going to always have jobs within the library, within the recreation center, and within food service. So that's an easy place to start just because they have the most positions. But offices may offer administrative positions as well. Labs may offer student positions. There may be a variety of sort of internship type jobs specific to your academic area, but a lot of students end up outside of their academic field and do a welcome desk where they help new students get to know the campus, or a residence hall assistant. So if you live in the dormitories your first year, you can apply to be an RA. And what that would mean was you would continue to live in the residence halls, but you would help the group of students coming in after you. And that often covers your housing. They'll pay for your housing within that dormitory, your meal plan, and often a small stipend. So there are lots of different types of jobs, but the most common are going to be hourly positions within offices on campus. What is early decision and early action, and what do they mean? So there are some institutions that will have you apply. They have different sets of deadlines. They have earlier deadlines, and then they have a general deadline. Early decision or early action may require you to apply on that early deadline, but also give them a decision. So when you apply to some of these institutions on those earlier deadlines, they're saying, if we accept you in this timeline, you will say you're coming here, which is important to know. Some of them don't have that obligation. Some of them, you're applying early, you're getting in early. It means you're getting top scholarship consideration, which is really important, but it doesn't have that obligation of you saying that you plan on attending there if you're admitted. I'm interested to learn more about life in the Midwest. So I'm actually not from Kansas City. I'm from Michigan, which is also in the Midwest. The Midwest has a really good reputation for being friendly. We're pretty social, outgoing people, even though our cities are smaller. We are probably more likely to tell you hi and chat with you, even though we don't know you. The Midwest pace of life is probably a little bit slower than some other parts of the country. And the Midwest also has some very rural areas. So that's generally the reputation for the Midwest. It's cornfields, and most of our food is grown in the Midwest that serves the rest of the country. But there are really great cities like Kansas City, like Chicago, like St. Louis that are really fun to explore. You're going to run into people that want to talk to you, which I think is exciting. I like getting to know new people, obviously. I'm from the Midwest. This is a great question. Is Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas the same and interchangeable? It is a great question. It is something that people in the United States, unless they're from this area, also don't always know. So they are two different cities. They have two different mayors and governing bodies. But aside from crossing the state line as an individual, like if you're shopping or moving around, it's basically one big city. Most of what you see, so obviously we're on the Missouri side, and that big downtown district is on the Missouri side. So the larger portion of the population potentially, and the larger portion of businesses are on the Missouri side. There are obviously businesses and things on the Kansas City, Kansas side, but it's just a little bit smaller. All right, please would you be able to share more details on your current Indian students and also as to what programs they're pursuing and their success stories? So the great thing about this is, while I don't have a whole lot to share, they do, and they're very, very happy to do so. And I forgot to include their website here, but if you go onto Facebook in particular, it's just called the UMKC Indian Student Association, so ISA, and they are very, very active. They will respond to you, they'll happily chat with you. They are very active, both online and on campus. If you have any trouble finding it, I can send that to you, or I can send you a contact within the Indian Student Association. They're a really cool group. They host different events. They help students with arrival. If you have questions about where to live or what to do, or your parents have questions, they get a lot of those questions from families still in India, and they're very, very happy to answer them. A lot of our students from India, though, are in the fields that you would expect. There are a lot that are within the School of Computing and Engineering. There are a lot within the business programs, and that's where the majority of them are studying. That doesn't mean there aren't other students in other academic programs. That's just the higher percentage. We do have students who have participated in creating a business here in Kansas City that are from India, and that was really exciting. Like I said, we have a really strong entrepreneurial spirit here in Kansas City, so there are all kinds of opportunities. But I will let them share some of their stories, and actually I will see if I can get some more information from them, like a specific story, and I can send that out to all of you. How much access will I have to faculty members as a bachelor's degree student? You should have tons of access, and that should be true regardless of where you go in the US. We interact really heavily with our faculty. We ask them questions. We talk to them outside of class. They will stick around usually after class to answer questions. They want you to participate. They want you to engage. And some faculty even include their telephone number on the syllabus and say, hey, you can text me if you're stuck on an assignment or if you have any questions, and they'll give parameters like please don't text after 10 o'clock at night or something like that. But you should have a lot of access. And then as part of the contracts, faculty members have office hours that are established. So they're telling you, I will be in my office every Tuesday and Thursday from 10 to 2 or whatever that is. And you can often just show up, but otherwise you make an appointment and you can go in and talk to them on one-on-one basis as well. So do the tuition costs remain the same across majors? So the tuition cost does remain the same, but individual programs may have specific fees that are associated with them, like a lab fee. All of that should be really transparent on the website, although it can be a little bit hard to find. So if you go to our website, for example, all of our costs are listed under the cashier's website. A lot of websites, ours included, typically have a calculator where you can put in your program and it'll calculate the tuition for you, so you don't have to play with all the per credit hour, and if I'm enrolled in this many, I have this fee. Right now, I know our calculator is down, so that's not super helpful, but if you have a specific program that you're looking at, I can help you with that. Are you test optional? And also, I would like to learn your AP test policies. We aren't even test optional. We don't require the SAT for international students at all. If you're taking the SAT and you want to use that as your proof of English proficiency, we're happy to accept it. We know you worked hard to take that test and we want to acknowledge what you've accomplished. We don't need it for the academic admission criteria, but we can use it for English. And then for AP test policies, obviously we give you some credit, some college credit for your AP tests that you've done well on. We have that online on our website where I can show you, but I can also send that to you in email so you can look at the specific classes and tests that you've taken and determine what classes we award you credit for and how that impacts your plan to study at UMKC. So we have major maps for all of our academic programs, and you can take and look at those classes that we would award you credit for your AP courses and see what classes you would no longer have to take within your major map. All right. At your university, what would the impact in terms of duration of my degree and tuition fees be if I double major or I choose one major and one minor? So that's a really great question. We encourage all of our students to have established their major or majors, or even their minors, no later than the end of their second year of study. And that's in part because we want to keep you on track to graduate on time. And on time is considered 4 years. We do have students that take 5 years, and it may be because they made a late decision or they chose particularly complex dual majors. But if you come in and you know what you want to do, and you communicate that with your academic advisor, they will help you map out your classes. It may mean that you have no flexibility. You have to take exactly those classes as they are mapped out from the very first semester, and you take that map, and that's how you graduate in 4 years. But it depends on the major a little bit because some of them are more flexible than others. Some of them may have some overlap where the same class counts towards both. But it's very important to communicate clearly with your academic advisor, and everyone will have an academic advisor, potentially 2, depending on where your double majors are located, and they will help make sure that you can graduate on time. Double majors can be a little bit complicated, but very doable. Choosing one major and one minor should not impact your graduation time at all. That should be fine. So what are the freshman application requirements for the 2021 intake? I mentioned earlier the 3.0 on a 4-point scale and a 79 on the TOEFL are very, very safe grades and scores to have for consideration to our programs. There are some that will consider you if your grades and scores are a little bit lower, but you're less likely to be considered for that scholarship that they might offer. So hopefully that helps. The other thing to consider is the individual programs. There are a few like conservatory that have application deadlines, and then specific requirements related to performance that are worth looking at on our website. And then the question is if our institution accepts an education loan letter from a bank as proof of financial support. And the answer there is maybe. It depends on the content of the document, and we have accepted some in the past. There may be specific questions that we need to have answered based on what the letter says. But basically what we need to know is that those finances are secured. So it's not conditional on something that we can't guarantee will be fulfilled. But if the language on the document says, yes, this money is yours to use for education, it is secured, the answer is probably. Would UMKC waive English proficiency exams for students who completed their entire high school education in India in English language? Unfortunately, at this time, we don't waive the English language proficiency exams. But hopefully, if you're going through an institution that is in English, and now I know it depends on the high school, but maybe you've taken the SAT anyway, and we can take that test so you don't have to take an additional English test. But at the moment, there are no academic units, because they can kind of choose individually, that are waiving the English proficiency exams at the undergraduate level. For the I-20, are we required to submit the same? Oh, at the time of admission. And what is the I-20 amount? So the I-20 amount was on our costs page, and I can go back to that if that's helpful. And then you don't have to submit it at the time of admission. Depending on the institution, they'll let you do it with different teams. So you may not work with the same team to get your I-20 as you do for your admission. At UMKC, you will always work with the same person. So when you apply, you will have an admissions processor who will help you through that process, both for the academic portion and for the I-20. We will ask you for the documents that we need for your I-20 at the point of admission. So when you apply at UMKC, you get a checklist, and it'll tell you all the documents that we need. And those documents will be there. But we will make an academic decision for you and let you know if you're admissible, and then you can send in the rest. So sometimes students wait on that just because if you think you're going to get a scholarship, the financial proof of support that you have to present is a little bit lower and sometimes easier for students. If, however, you submit all of those documents at the time that you apply, it'll probably be a faster process because we don't have to wait for you to accumulate those documents later and then send them in to us. Once we have everything, we usually get our decisions back out within 2 weeks. What are the popular majors taken by students at the University of Missouri, Kansas City? That's a really good question. So I think things in the hard sciences are really popular. Math, physics, biology, chemistry, anything within the School of Computing and Engineering, which would be mechanical engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, and IT. And then a lot of the programs within business are obviously very popular. Business administration has a marketing focus that students really like. And then the Conservatory of Music and Dance and Theater are very popular, but it kind of depends on you. So it should be more, what are you interested in studying? How does housing work at your universities? So housing, you apply online and they place you with a roommate based on a survey that you took. You can preference your residence halls where you'd like to live. And then they are located right on campus, very, very close to the student union and to probably closest to the business buildings. But walkable. There's one you have to cross the street to get onto campus and the other you do not. So they're very, very close. Breakdown of tuition costs, housing, and meals. So I put the cost of attendance back up on the screen. I hope that's helpful. And I went over scholarships. Assistantships are not available at the undergraduate level. So this says, can you go over your scholarships and assistantships for undergraduate and international students? Assistantships are something that are available at the grad level because the students have the academic background accomplished from their undergraduate studies, and they use those in support in those positions. So they may be teaching assistants where they help other students get through their undergraduate courses, or they may be research assistants where they apply the knowledge from their undergraduate program to the research that they're working on with their faculty in their graduate program. So that's specific to graduate programs. And then I can go to the scholarship slide as well again. What is the nearest international airport if you would like to visit? The Kansas City International Airport is the nearest international airport. I will say, however, that most people, just because of frequency and cost of flights, actually come in through like Chicago, New York, California. But you can technically fly straight into Kansas City. We do accept the common application. And can I share safety about the university and information about Kansas City? Sure. So Kansas City and UMKC are pretty safe, but I will say all institutions in the United States have to report any activity, any crimes that have occurred within a certain physical distance of campus. So there is a report online that you can read. But I would say that campus feels very, very safe walking around. Kansas City feels very safe walking around. But like any big city, you have to know where you're going. Especially if you are wandering at night or going different places. It's important to talk to people and get to know the city so that you know where you are safe. There are places that are safer at night than others. And typically what this means is, are there other people around? And that's true for all big cities. As you work into areas with diminishing populations and people present, there is more potential for things to happen. So we have services on campus, for example. Let's say you stayed in the library until midnight or extended hours during exams and it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you no longer feel comfortable walking by yourself. You can ask our campus police to escort you back to the residence halls or to your car. We think it's very, very important, regardless of statistics, regardless of how safe it actually is, that you feel safe. So we have different things in place to make sure that you feel safe on campus and don't just have to believe me when I say that it's safe. All right, how big is your campus and what is campus life like at UMKC? Our campus is about has about 13,000 people. I don't know the physical spread of our campus, what that is, but I do like, it's kind of shaped like a donut because there's a library right in the middle that isn't ours. And so we have our own library, we have that library and different academic unit libraries on campus. But you can circumnavigate the library that is not ours. It's very green, lots of trees, very walkable. Life on campus, I think, is a lot of fun. There are often food trucks and different events that are brought in on campus in an area right outside my building that's flat. They've had video games and bull riding and different things just to try to get students away from the desk for a little bit and outside and wiggle, reduce some of that stress, and then get back to studying. There are lots of very active student groups, so you'll see them out with tables to let you know about their events that are going on. And so it's really up to you in getting involved, but everybody's out there and advertising their events. We also advertise our events for our international student ambassadors on our social media. So this is a specific question about IBDP grade point requirements. We can look at individual curriculums if you want to. I don't know off the top of my head, but if you want to send me an email, we can go over any of that. We do all of the credential evaluation in-house, which means our office does all of that, and you will never be required to submit a report from a third party that does that grade conversion. So we can look at that with you and figure that out. And then which test would be preferred, IELTS, TOEFL, or Duolingo? We do not have a preference, so it's whatever is easily available to you and whatever you feel comfortable with works for us. So we accept any of those and no preference is given. And I think that is me out of questions.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much to everyone who asked these great questions, and thank you so much to you for answering all these questions.
Thank you for letting me talk at you all for an hour.
Really appreciate, Mary, all your kind time. Before we we conclude for the day, I'm going to launch another poll for all the students who are out here, and you can see it on your screens right now. Did you find the session to be useful? This is for all the attendees who have attended the session, so please put in your answers. And of course, once we're done with polling, I want to come back online just to thank everyone and share some more information. So I'm going to wait for another 5 seconds so I don't interrupt anyone. And we can then cap off for the day. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I think I'm going to end the poll now. And Mary, if you can just tell me if you can see the results on your screen, that will be really helpful to us.
I can. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mary. Really appreciate it. I don't know why my screen goes off sometimes, but I think everyone can hear me, but I think I'm back on again. So really appreciate your kind time, Mary, for joining us today. And really, this is a wonderful session. I know the questions are great. The information you shared was great. This is a topic, as I discussed, email, many students and parents and guidance counselors have been having. So really appreciate the time. To all those attendees, that I know it's in the evening, so thank you for joining us on a Friday evening. And before we sign off, Mary, if you could just kindly put your contact details, that slide, just in case anyone might want to write it down. I think that would be really helpful. Thank you so much for that. And I sincerely look forward to keeping in touch with you. And to all the attendees and the panelists, as you know, the Knowledge at KPT Admissions 101 Workshop Series is a free initiative to connect US higher ed institutions with guidance counselors, your schools, and of course, you and students and parents. This session is of course recorded, so it will be shared with all this, with your school and of course with other schools in the area. So please feel free to check out our social media pages and also check with your guidance counselor for a recording of this session. Having said that, I would like to conclude for the day and once again thank Miss Mary Parsons from UMKC for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and I wish you a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Wish you a good day. Bye-bye.